Millions of Americans traveling over the long holiday weekend, and Las Vegas, as usual, will be one of their top destinations.
But there is one place in town no one wants to visit, yet it remains incredibly busy day and night: the county jail. 8 News Now Chief Investigator George Knapp ventured behind bars to learn the art and science of running the Clark County Detention Center.
Did you hear that? The art and science of corrections, being detained, keeping people detained in correctional facilities. So last time I checked, they had bachelors of arts and sciences at colleges and universities. I know criminal justice is one of them, political science, you can get sociology, math, business, those kinds of bachelors. But the art and science of detaining people, you might want to check that out. I share these things so that you will think for yourself. Research, inquire, study, listen to the words, read between the lines, look at the words, break them down, figure out what people are saying. It's easy for someone to say something with a smile on their face and act like they have good intentions, but you must know your rights so that they won't be violated. If you don't know your rights, you concede them. Art and science of correctional facilities and detaining people, jailing people. 13th Amendment. Who does it apply to? Does it apply to you? The 13th Amendment loophole that says that people can become enslaved if they commit a crime. Do you know what those crimes are? You know what is considered a crime? Or do you just assume that you're not a criminal? You need to be paying attention to the laws and what the legislator's saying about certain things that may be considered as regular conduct in your eyes, but can be considered a crime.
Most people in booking didn't wake up that morning and say, I think by midnight I want to be in chains at the Clark County Detention Center for something, crazy. And they're angry at somebody.
Raise your hand if you know someone that talks like that wakes up in the morning and says, I want to be locked up in jail by midnight tonight. I don't. I've never even met anyone that talks like that. And yet the officer is saying that they're going there and never assuming they'll be there for something crazy. Well, last time I checked, crazy is one thing, insanity is another, and crime is crime. So you need to know the rules and the laws and the policies where you're going so that you don't violate, because you might do something a little crazy. And guess what? You're locked up. You can't get out. What are you going to do? Especially if you don't live there and you decide to go to Vegas. Clark County's in Vegas, just in case you didn't know. That is Vegas, right? So you need to know before you travel what is considered apparently crazy, and also what is considered a crime, what is illegal. You see at the bottom, I said, never speak to anybody without an attorney. Not even simple questions like, what did you eat for dinner tonight? Guess what? It's none of their business without an attorney there. And if you can't afford an attorney, then one has to be provided for you. Know your Miranda rights, just in case somebody accidentally forgets a word or a line. And then also demand to speak to an attorney. If they keep asking, what's your mom's name? What's your brother's name? Your sister's name? Where do you live? I need an attorney present. I'm not answering any questions until I have an attorney present. End of story.
Every day, on average, 158 people are booked into the Clark County Detention Center, more than 57,000 total last year, and they remain in jail for an average of 18 days. More than 400 of the inmates here are awaiting trial for murder. More than 30 of those have been waiting 5 years or longer. In decades past, the old county jail was so overcrowded that federal authorities put it under a consent decree. Its replacement facility is carefully managed to keep a vacancy rate of about 30%.
What exactly does that consent decree involve? Who is managing it? And so there's some U.S. codes that you need to know about people being detained in violation of their rights or mental illness. Are they even competent to be detained in a correctional facility?
You know, you can't fill the jail and have that solve your problems. It just creates a whole other set of problems. So as we've learned these things as a profession, you know, we've been in front of that change curve, so to speak, on how to make this community safer without populating the jail and filling the jail with people.
New arrivals go through a detailed booking process. Fingerprints get taken. Photos are snapped of tattoos, often valuable to gang enforcement. All felony suspects must provide DNA samples, an incredibly important tool that helped solve dozens of other serious crimes last year. Male and female inmates are segregated, of course, but they get divvied up into many other subcategories.
So everyone gets classified based on their criminal history, their charges, their gang affiliation. We have a classification section that's ran by our officers where they try to house similarly classified inmates all together. So that way you don't get someone who's in on his first offense for domestic violence with a roommate who is a convicted murderer who's now murdered again.
Sex offenders get housed in a separate section. So do transgender inmates, in part for their own protection. Military veterans, as a group, have common needs and problems, so they too have their own section. Getting meals and medical attention to a constantly shifting population is an immense challenge. Many who end up behind bars are homeless, and Captain Clark estimates 40% of the inmates have mental health issues requiring medication, making the jail Nevada's largest mental health facility.
There's a doctor here, there's a psychologist here, there's people here that can give them the medication that they need. The challenge is when it's time for them to leave, they're back out in your neighborhood and mine, and the idea that they're just going to be able to continue their care once they leave the facility is a fantasy.
The jail is not meant to be a place to punish suspects, since most here have not been tried, let alone convicted. Metro understands that it is sort of a temporary dumping ground for social ills, including homelessness and mental health. The time they spend in jail presents an opportunity for the police that can reduce the crime rate. Multiple programs have been implemented at the jail to teach basic life skills for when the inmates are released.
We are corrections officers. Our job is to correct the behavior. The programs that we've brought in, the Hope for Prisoners, DSD Cares events, where we bring people in from all over the community to help people get a driver's license when they're released, get their Social Security card when they're released, to get back on insurance when they're released. All these programs are helping these people go back out into society and not come back.
Astonishingly, some inmates are what you might call frequent flyers. Some of them have been arrested more than 600 times over the years, most of those for vice or prostitution. Overall, it is a kinder, gentler approach than the old lock 'em up, throw away the key. But corrections officers and staff know the jail's most important function remains the same as ever, to protect the public by keeping the worst of the worst where they belong.
Unfortunately, we still have people that the only thing they know is jail.
Sounds like a great Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, walk in the park until it's you. And so you heard all of those groups that they mentioned, homeless, veterans, other groups that they mentioned, gang detail that they talked about. There's a lot in that one little section of news clip. So I showed you an example of how to really dive in and investigate these things, or understand more about what's being said, knowing your rights. I encourage you to go back to that clip and figure out what are the programs they're talking about. Like, is that happening in your area? Who's managing this? Who's overseeing? Who's responsible? Look up the DOJ, the Department of Justice complaints on the correctional facilities. Find out what types of lawsuits have been raised. Know before you travel what you're getting yourself into and what is considered illegal activity.
When certain obstructionists become too irritating, label them after suitable buildups as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic, and use the prestige of anti-fascist and tolerance organizations to discredit them. In the public mind, constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell. The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public